White fans versus black fans.
Yeah.
Biggest difference.
Biggest difference. Well, white fans are they're a lot more. Let's say, if you take metal, these guys they do the genre. They perform the genre. Fans, like a lot of them, probably most of them, the male fans, they're guitarists or they're drummers or they're vocalists themselves, even if that's some little local band. But the biggest difference is the fact that, you know, when you look at brothers and you look at black folk, everybody wants to be a rapper, something like that. Let's just go, you know, that's an example. Everybody, all these black males, they want to be a rapper. They think they can rap. So the biggest difference though is that those guys, you know, in the metal genre, punk rock genre, they're fans first. Number one, they're fans first. Like, I'm a fan before I'm an artist. With rap, it's not even the other way around. Usually it's I'm an artist and that's it. I'm not a fan. You know, I'm not even trying to listen. Like, I will, and I know a lot of people can you know, vouch for this because they do it themselves. I will sit and go to certain channels and I would sit and just listen to bands, local bands. I would sit and just I would spend hours and hours at a time of just listening to local bands that I've never heard of, that I see them on, I see they got a music video, I go listen to. You know what I mean? But the biggest difference is just, as I said, they're fans first. So because they're fans first, the attitude isn't, all right, well, you're doing this, so you're gonna be better than me. That's never the attitude. And metal is and punk is so diverse, so where that's cool. Like, you got guys that do a lot of singing. They heavy and they might do a lot of singing. And you got guys that do a lot of screaming. You know what I mean? But it's diverse, but ultimately in the grand scheme of things, everybody's a fan. You know what I mean? They're a fan first, as opposed to rap. They hear somebody rapping, they're like,
and then they're competition.
Competition, that's exactly what's going on. So they get envious.
Everybody's the best rapper.
Exactly. And everybody's trying to prove that they're the best rapper, as opposed to hearing something somebody did and was like, that went hard. You know what I mean? Yeah, and becoming a fan, like, that's what I do. You know, I hear these other bands, and it's cool because when I was, you know, if I'm on a little tour, or if I'm going to do a show, I always see bands that are on a ticket that I've never heard of. And I will sit there and you will see some of the bigger bands, like even the bigger bands, like you'll see a big vocalist. You go look at videos of some of these metal bands, you'll see a big vocalist and they'll be just sitting there in the back just listening to this band that's much smaller than them. And I feel like that's not happening with the brothers. That's not happening. They don't do that. You know, it's more, well, I hear you rapping, I'm gonna try to one up you, and that's it. Well, it might be a friendly competition every now and then with metal, but as I said, ultimately everybody's a fan. And because everybody's a fan, the last thing we're thinking about, in a lot of sense, as musicians, the last thing we're thinking about is trying to one up them. We're more so like, that went hard. Let me get a CD. So many times I've been on shows with other bands and the bands are like, hey man, can I get a CD? I'm like, yeah. And I'm saying the same thing. Like, yo, went hard, let me get a CD. You know, as opposed to all of that other stuff, hating and all. I'm like, I'm not envious. I'm like, this band goes hard. Because ultimately, if we do that and you build that connection, you can bridge a gap between their fans and your fans, and ultimately it ends up helping you anyway. So hating don't get you nowhere.
Okay, so you touched the artist aspect of being a fan, but what about the supporters? Black versus white.
Black versus white, good question. Supporters. White folk, as you can see, they will get behind it. And they will get behind it in full force and in numbers. That's why they dominate like pop music and stuff like that, or why they can get a guy like Macklemore and Iggy who does something that's predominantly black, and they getting. A lot of people look at that and they're like, man, you know, they trying to steal it. But as I said, you go to their shows, it ain't a bunch of black folk that's at their shows. It's a bunch of other white folk. You know what I mean? So the biggest thing is that they will get behind it, and they would also spend money to get behind it, as opposed to not spending money and getting behind it. Like, they will go to the shows, they will buy the merch of a band and things like that, as opposed to the black folk. They do that, don't get me wrong, but it's not nearly as collectively, because it's going to be so much hating. And it's like, like if we take rap for example, each rapper has his own like backing, his own following, and they following gets so like caught up in, all right, well, I like this guy, this is my dude, I'm gonna support him, and anything outside of that, I'm just not going to have any part of that. As opposed to collectively, because it ultimately helps everybody. If you sit, I ain't saying you gotta like everything, no, but everybody has an idea of what go hard, and you know it's people that saying something in their head, they're like, damn, that go hard, but they hating out loud.
Because it's a threat.
It's exactly.
They see it as a threat, but it can really help them if they show it love.
Exactly. If they show it love and take it for what it's worth, it's gonna benefit them a lot more. And that's something that I had to learn, because as I said, I was this same foolish brother. Let's not get it twisted like I'm thinking I'm above everybody. No, it's just I happen to learn from, because I was that guy trying to one up everybody. But I'm seeing more success doing this than I've ever done, even with dancing. You know, being on a nationally televised, you know, I'm getting shouted out. I remember, shout out to the Cali Swag District. They was on 106 in Park. Go look at the tape. And they went and started shouting around. It's like, shout out to YG Ripper. So I got guys shouting me out on the national television. However, doing metal, I've got so much. And it's crazy, because even if, theoretically, if the numbers are saying, it just feels a lot more dominant as metalheads, because you look at like a rap venue, usually in numbers, sometimes, most of the time, they're going to do more. But you, from a support aspect, if I say do 500, say if I do a show and it's 1,000 people in my rap venue and 1,000 people at my rock venue. So the rock deal is just going to be a lot more, it just feels a lot, the era. Like in the aura, it feels so supportive. Like everybody's showing love. It ain't a whole bunch of people. Yeah, we moshing and it gets rough. But a lot of people like the moshing. You see people really looking like they taking each other head off. But the number one rule is like, if somebody fall, you pick them up. So they're gonna get trampled. So even if we roughing each other up, we still showing love, as opposed to these brothers. They start rubbing. You step on somebody new kicks, you gotta fight them. There's no doubt about it. You gotta fight them. So that's the biggest difference, is that you look at the fans, and because I was that guy, I've been performing, Bring the Beef, and seeing people start knocking their head off before my verse even come up. Charlotte just finished her verse, people already knocking their, don't let it get to Jadon verse, because if it ain't had a fight start then, it's about to start when he start rapping. Well, I've been on stage with doing metal, and I'm screaming and I'm singing, and I'm seeing everybody circle piss, I'm seeing everybody roughing houses, slam dancing, going crazy. But it's not saying that it hasn't happened, but rarely, or more rarely, as opposed to the rap, people ain't getting in fights like that. But that's the biggest thing. That's just one aspect. But just from the whole grand scheme, they're just more supportive. They're just more supportive and more willing to get behind.